And so what we're going to take some time to talk about today, and by the way, we'll have Q&A, guys. And so on the back end of this, just at any time, I'm going to cover this stuff for, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes, give or take. But but just put Q&A in if you have any, and we'll definitely have time for that here at the end. But I want to cover this, and part of the reason I'm going to go through this just directly is because we're going to actually, this training is so important. We're actually going to be building something out of it to share with our clients. And so some of you guys, before I get started, might, well, I'll add this piece in. What we find is we've gotten really good at the how to hire the right people, but who and when continues to be a problem. And one of the problems is that there is no exact answer. Many small businesses need two or three people, and it's like I can't hire all of them at once, and which one should be first, and when do I hire? And so a lot of what we're going to talk about today is just really good business practice that comes from stuff that I do in the business coaching side and that I've learned over 27 years in business. But the reality is one of the things that happens from this is that you can actually build a hiring plan. And so from a team architect's perspective, and why this is on this call, um, is the first time we've kind of formally put this out in front of clients, but it potentially may become one of the more important trainings that we offer on our platform so that people can create a plan. And we have a handful of clients, it's definitely not the norm, when they come to us and they can say, and Brandon can attest to this, that they can say, here's who I'm hiring for the next year. And they've got it planned out like almost by month of who and when they're going to hire. And especially when you're in a growth phase, that kind of proactive planning, even if you don't quite follow it to a T, but it just allows you to plan resources and expenses and activities a lot better. And so that's kind of the point of what we're covering here. Amber, is there a way for me to control your screen, or do I just need to?
I think I think probably not. Hang on.
I
Let's
would just tell
see.
her to go to the next slide,
Yeah,
Steve.
I'll just tell you. So,
You might be able to now. I tried to give you slide control. We'll see. If not, I'll go
okay,
next. Here we go.
it worked.
Oh,
Did you click next or did I?
I did.
Oh, okay, cool. So let's go back to their slide because we're going to record this and I just want to have an intro. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And we'll just edit out this stuff. So on this training, the main thing, like I said, I want to cover is the idea of almost guaranteeing your results for 2026. And so many people set goals. Many people have, potential informal goals that they'll slide. They might write them down, they may not. By the way, if you write your goals down, you're in the top 3% of all people in the world, just because you write them down. And then there's even fewer people out of those 3% that actually do something about it. But the reality is, if we can set goals in a particular manner and we can use the goals to reverse engineer backwards to where we are, then what that gives us is the roadmap backwards on how to get to where we want to go from where we are. And I'm going to talk about that today. There's 4 components that we're going to show you guys that will allow you to be able to hone in and take very clear action and very proactive action. And so let's pop to the next slide. And so in these 4 sections, the number one thing that we have to do is have properly aligned goals. And I will tell you, very often we see clients who are running away from something rather than running towards it. They know what they don't want much more often than they know what they do want. And so I'm not saying that's a bad thing. And kind of by trying all these different things, we hone in on what we want. But the reality is, a lot of business owners don't know what they want exactly, or they see someone else's business and they're emulating that. Again, it's not the worst place to be, but in a perfect scenario, there's a way to create more aligned goals. We're going to talk about that. So that gives us an end point for what we're shooting for. And I'm going to use a GPS analogy today. And so I think we all understand that the idea of using a GPS type model in your business to say, hey, we want a really clear destination, because in the GPS, if we don't plug an exact address in, it can't tell us where to go. But I will also say, I'm in Texas right now, and if I was going to head over to the coast to go see Brandon in the Carolinas, I can just start heading east. And I can probably drive for quite a while before he sends me his address. So if I have a general location, I can get started and I can make a lot of progress. The one thing that I'll say is this third section we're going to talk about today, um, or sorry, part of the second section we're going to talk about today is auditing your current location. Business owners are traditionally bad about actually understanding where they are. And if we don't audit our current situation, we don't know what our location is. So in the GPS model, it's like getting into a GPS and it can't, when it spins and thinks, it can't even activate because it doesn't know where you are. And so if we don't know where we're starting, the GPS can't even tell us which way to turn out of the driveway. We literally can't even get started. We're just guessing from the very first movement forward in our plan. And so this audit is a largely missed piece in most people's businesses. And then thirdly, it's reverse engineering the gap. And so if we say, hey, we created a really well aligned goal, we created a very clear picture of where we currently are. Now we've got 2 points, and we can just trace backwards from where we want to be to where we are, which requires some knowledge about how our business works, which I think our clients, that team architects who are hiring other people, typically don't have the problem of not understanding how their business works, but we do need to understand the leading activities that drive lagging results. So how many clients, how many leads we need to generate a client, how many clients we need to generate certain revenue, how many workers or operational people we need to fulfill our client obligations. If we don't understand all that, we can't do the reverse engineering part of number 3. And so we're going to talk more about that today. And then number 4 is, once we've reverse engineered a plan with more aligned goals, clear picture of where we are, now we've got a plan that we've reverse engineered. We're going to project that forward and we're going to manage to the plan. We have to actually execute on it. And so today, that's what we're going to cover. And then, like I said, we'll make sure, there's time for Q&A here. But if you guys aren't doing something like that, like this, I would suggest taking really good notes. The replay will be available. We'll send it out. Um, but this is something that you should be doing at this time of year, every year, especially. You can be doing it any point in time, anytime you're not happy with your results and you're unclear of what your next main steps are, or you're not sure what we should do. You have a couple of different ideas, or you have no idea of what to do because things aren't going the way you want. This process can be inserted at that point in time. Just so happens, as we're recording this, um, this is a year-end planning type thing. As you can see the date up there, this is a time when you should be contemplating, what are we going to do in 2026, and how can we best be successful in those goals. So top slides. So actually, can you pop back, Amber, real quick? So I think these are out of order because we need to go to 1, setting appropriate line goals. There you go. So on the next one, just jump back and then go forward. So on this first section, for you guys, for takeaways, the way that we've set this up for you, and Brandon, let's make sure that everybody gets these slides as part of this. We'll probably put these in some downloadable format when we send out the replay. But the way this is set up, we're going to cover the things that you need to do and the biggest mistakes that you might run into and the benefits of doing this. And so getting a clear, meaningful set of realistic expectations and goals for the year is really, really important. And so the things that we have to do is understand what we really want in our business. And I'm going to tell you guys a big secret here, and why potentially this is a lot harder than many people think, is because what you want from your business is typically a subset of what you want out of life. And many people split the two. Their business takes on a life of its own. And quite frankly, it takes on the primary role and they become, I am the flipper. I am the commercial real estate guy. I am the, whatever business owner. Like, you think you become the person that's doing the business, and we kind of lose our identity into the business. And the reality is we need to be really strong in who we are and what we want in life personally. And the business should be designed to give us that. It gives us the time and the money and the resources to live the life that we want to. And so sometimes, to set really appropriate, aligned is the key, goals in your business, we need to actually project outside of the business and ask ourselves, what do we really want? And so, if there were like a room full of 1,000 people here and I would ask all of you if you work more hours than you want to, the vast majority of you would raise your hand and probably say yes. Or I would say, thank you for being honest, Mike. Or I would say, do you spend any time doing stuff you don't want to do? And I would say that the business isn't designed the best for you. Do you make the money that you need to live the lifestyle that you want comfortably? If not, the business isn't operating the way that it needs to. And then outside of money and time, which by the way, we talk a lot, obviously Team Architects is really based around the people part of this, is putting the right team in place. All you're doing is investing in people to get a return, and you're buying some of your time back every time you hire someone. But more importantly, what you're doing is investing in an ROI where that person's going to do more and better than you did in that role. So maybe you're really, really good at the things you do, but because you're doing 5 things, you don't do any of them more than 20% of your time because you have 20% of your time going into 5 different things. And so that's 100% of your time. In fact, it's probably more like 30% of your time is going into 5 different things, and you have 150% of your time going into the business, and you're working 60 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week, and you wish you weren't. And so the reality is 2 things happen when we bring the right people in. We we spend the money to buy back our time, but that's initially, but over time, that investment into that person has an ROI. And so they actually become more productive at what we were doing part-time because we're spread thin. They become full-time on something and they actually produce better than you. And so understanding that the business can give you your time back and can give you money and income, but also it gives you resources, it gives you connections, and it gives you a place to learn and grow. And so there's more to it than just money and time in the business. A second big thing that we have to do is set stretchingly realistic goals. I'm not going to get too deep into this here, but many people um, don't create stretching goals where they just say, hey, based on last year, let's go 20%. But double as many people actually set very unrealistic goals and they hit their first $1 million year or they hit their $10 million or whatever. And then they think they're going to have a 50% year growth over growth or 100% growth. They say, hey, I did 5 million last year. I'm going to do 10 this year. Unless there's something major going on that accounts for that growth, it's probably not going to happen. And so, one of the things that we run into and the big mistakes that we see with people, especially in the masterminds that we help with and the coaching clients that we work with, is that they have this shoot for the moon and land in the stars mentality. Like, well, I wanted to do 5 million next year, but if I fail and fall short, at least, I'll do 3 or 4 million. But the reality is if you spend all year making decisions based on trying to be a $5 million company, but really last year you were a $2 million company and you're trying to grow to 3.5 million this year because that's what you're truly happy with, which would be a really, really high rate of growth, by the way, you would make very different decisions on marketing and hiring and many other things, office space. There's a lot of things that come into play when you're trying to shoot for the moon, when the reality is if we want to land in the stars, let's shoot for the stars. Let's just be very appropriate. And so we don't want to compare ourselves to other people to set goals. We really want to start from what do we really want? And a quick, easy way to think about this so I can keep the presentation moving is if you're the only owner of the company, your net profit of the company is basically your income, unless you're paying yourself obviously a salary. So whatever salary you pay yourself and whatever net profit that the income has or that the business has, that's your income. And so if you want to look at it that way, if you have business partners and everything, you have to adjust. But also the amount of whatever job you're taking on in the business, however many hours you have to work, that's what you're committing to. And so if you can start with how many hours do I want to work? How much, money do I want to make and what value am I going to bring to the world in exchange for that time and money? That's a conversation, a thought process to go through on its own. And then we reverse back to, okay, what does the business need to do from a profit standpoint to support the lifestyle that I want? And I'm going to work towards that. And so this will give you a very clear, motivating target because you know that if the business hits what it's supposed to, you'll get what you want personally. And a lot of times, unfortunately, we see people that are hitting their business goals and they're actually getting really upset personally because they're kind of starting to resent their business because they're not happy because they found out that the business goals weren't really aligned with their personal goals. And so we really, really want to work on that alignment there. And we'll make much better decisions and have better momentum if we are shooting for exactly what we want and we plan for exactly what we want and we gut check that against realistic expectations for what growth could be. All right, let's pop to the next slide. So, secondly, as you guys are working through this process right now, once we have better aligned goals, the second thing we need to do is more accurately understand where we currently are. Where are we starting from? If the goal is the end line at the end of the year of 2026 coming up, what is the starting line? And so this will help us determine the path forward. And I think a lot of times one of the issues that business owners deal with is just not having clarity around the next best steps to take. And so what we need to do in this step is get really accurate by looking at historical performance. And so if the goal setting is looking forward, this is looking backwards. And so this is us saying, let's study how many leads we've had, how many sales we've had, how much revenue we generated, how much marketing dollars we spent, what did we do operationally, how much work and effort is it to produce whatever the widget is or deliver the service that we do. Sometimes we can get pretty accurate at this, but typically without a expert, experienced outside person to come in, it's really hard to have an actual honest opinion of where you are because we have blind spots and we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes we give ourselves a hall pass for things that we don't do well. And sometimes we beat ourselves up and we don't give ourselves credit for what we do really well. And so it's just a really common thing to not have an honest, authentic understanding of what you're good at and what you're not, and what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. And so many times bringing in an outside person and getting really, really clear on the KPIs that matter are the things that we have to do. The biggest mistakes that get made in this step, like I said, is having a very distorted view of your strengths or weaknesses, and then also trying to audit things based on feelings. And so many times, even in marketing, if we have people that call in and they're not very warm and we think our marketing quality stinks because the conversations that we're having don't feel good, but the reality is those people are getting put into our contact database and over time they're getting nurtured and warmed up and sold. And then if we go back and look at the real statistics, we might find that our marketing is producing a lot better revenue than we thought, but that's what the data says. But our feelings tell us that these phone calls I'm on suck because nobody's ready to buy. And so it's really hard to audit and analyze yourself based on feelings. We want to get the data. And so that's a big mistake that people make. And then, like I said, not knowing what you don't know. You've got to invoke an outside party typically. And this is why you guys probably know or have heard about this, but almost every Fortune 5, any publicly traded company is required to hire an outside audit company. They will typically hire like a forensics accounting company, the consulting division, to come in and just tear through their business and audit what's going on, because it's not even it's even if you did know everything and had a way to be honest, it's not even as accountable to audit yourself. So having that third party come in is a really good practice. So the big benefits of this, again, are having clear direction on what needs to be done. And then maybe even more important than that is being able to prioritize where you need to focus your effort so that you're not pushing on 2, 3, 4 fronts all at once and nothing's getting much of your effort. So we can prioritize and be really clear here. And so that is a big step in developing our current location. And then, like I said, in the last step, we developed our destination. And now we can get to the third step. If you want to hop over there, Amber, where we can reverse engineer the gap. The reason we're so confidently telling you that you need to reverse engineer the gap is because if you don't have a gap between where you are and where you want to be in a year, more than likely you're not trying hard enough. And you're not in growth mode, which is okay. But this presentation is for companies that are trying to grow. So I guess there was a general assumption that maybe I should have said it 20 minutes ago before I started this, that if you're not trying to grow, this isn't for you. But if you are trying to grow, we know there will be a gap between where you are and where you're headed. And that gap may be in needing more marketing and lead sources. That gap might be in needing more or better sales processes to convert leads into clients, and or it might be upgrading or increasing your operational ability to fulfill whatever you do. More than likely, it's all three. And so it's important that when we reverse engineer, one of the things we have to do is be realistic. And so if you say that I'm going to do an extra $1 million this year, it's not going to be just $83,000 per month added to last year's numbers. Maybe, but that would be pretty dumb luck. The reality is we typically drop big marketing campaigns or we sponsor an event, we have a flood of clients, and then because of that we get busy fulfilling and then we catch back up and then we have to flood marketing, and it's more like it's going to be ups and downs that are getting higher each time. And so we have to be realistic about seasonal changes, about when we're going to be hiring more people to be able to support the growth. And that really comes into play with just assuming and creating what that structure is going to be. If you don't know any better, it can just run at a 45 or whatever 60-degree angle throughout the year. Um, but that's probably not how it's going to work. And so to get to the place where we can have accurate estimations about the activities we need to drive the results that will lead to revenue, we really need to understand our KPIs from the audit. So sometimes in the second step, if you don't have great KPIs, you can get held up in that step before you can exit and move on to the third step. We need to sit in the mess that we have and figure out what the leading indicator KPIs are that drive the lagging indicator results. And I'll tell you guys, if you're taking notes here, the generally we have lead gen, sales conversion, fulfillment, and then accounting and finance. There's 4 departments, and within each of those, we're probably going to have 3 to 5 leading activities that we can proactively do that drive 1 or 2 lagging results that we hope to achieve. The activities are steps and processes that we've developed that we might call standard operating procedures that should, and the results from those would be, what happens as part of that process successfully or just being executed, right? And so within each one of those buckets of lead gen, sales conversion, fulfillment, which is also operations, it can be called that, and then finance and accounting, if you want to add a 5th bucket and call it leadership, planning, goal setting, things like that, we can, but that can also kind of be bled into the other buckets. But if you're not really good at KPIs, that's just a quick little primer. Create those 3, 4 sections, and within each one, find 3 to 5 activities that, when done at the right time, the right way, will produce 1 or 2 key results that drive leads into sales and sales into clients and clients, into revenue. And so if we don't understand the ratios from the activities that drive the results, if you guys are following me, if we don't know looking forward, if we do these activities in this order, it'll produce these results. We can't find what revenue we want and reverse engineer to what results produce that revenue and reverse engineer into what activities produce those results. So in the audit step, it is a great time to ensure that we have a good set of KPIs. That's where we turn what we do in a business into a math equation so we can solve for success. And in the math equation, in the audit, we're working on the left side of the equation of whatever gets added, divided, multiplied, whatever, equals something. In this step, we're starting on the other side of the equation and we're reverse solving for X and Y and whatever, because we know what we want to get to. And then we're going to go backwards in the equation. And that's what we're redoing here. And so we can't, if we don't understand the first part, we can't do the second part. And so that's a really important part of this. And so this will also be a time where we can map out all the required actions, inputs, capacity, how much funding do we need, how many employees do we need. This is the part where we start to see what our hiring plan is, what I talked about at the beginning of the presentation. This is where we start to see, when we reverse engineer backwards, the activity is going to need that will need to drive the results that give us that realistic growth that we planned for the year. This is where we can start to look at, well, currently, this is how many leads, sales, and operational activities we can perform with our current team. We'll call that capacity. This is our current team's capacity. And then we can estimate required capacity in the future. And we can look at the two and say, oh gosh, we're going to need another sales guy. Or, oh gosh, I'm a solopreneur. And if I get so busy, if I make more sales and then I get pushed and driven here and there into what I need to do to fulfill, and that makes me busier in accounting and finance and other things, I'm not going to have time to do all the sales. If I increase my marketing so much, it's actually going to be more leads, and I'm going to need someone to help me. I might have to hire a sales assistant. There'll be different ways to skin this cat, but the reality is this is when you guys can literally decide now over the next 30 days, you could know exactly when we're going to hire all next year. And that is a peace of mind that most people don't have because they don't understand this process. I'm also going to tell you, you're going to want to write this down because it's a key. Think of, I love analogies. And so think of what a relay race would be like if the person who's getting the baton handed to them can't start running before the other person gets to them. The other person has to slow down and stop and hand it to that person before they take off and start running. Think about how much slower of a relay race they can run. And so we have to be able to build a head start, and we ramp into people. And so if we're looking at this plan, this is very important to this step. If we're looking at this plan and we're reverse engineering backwards right now and we say, gosh, in the second quarter next year, we're going to have to be doing twice as many sales as we are right now. I'm going to need more marketing and I'm going to need another salesperson. Well, if that salesperson needs to be up and running in April in the second quarter, we're going to need 90 to 120 days to get them found and hired, onboarded, and trained. And if we're talking about a COO or a CFO, it can be 6 to 9 months to find, onboard, train, and unleash a C-level. Now, if we're talking about an executive assistant doing very mundane and administrative things, potentially, we can hire that person in 30 to 60 days and onboard them in 60 to 90 days. But I want you guys to be thinking in terms of when do we need to be writing the ad and placing it? It's probably 3 to 4 months before that person needs to be up and running. So it's only part of what we need here is knowing when we need the person up and running, but now we need to know when are we going to start the process. So the reality is in this scenario, as we sit here in November, if any of you guys are thinking we need someone up and running by the second quarter, we should be talking right now about getting that ad together and figuring out what their comp plan is. Another quick side note is when you guys are planning, sometimes in this reverse engineering process, we have to understand what it's going to cost us to do all these things. And so if you're hiring someone that's 100 grand a year, it's not 80, you don't owe them 100 grand when you hire them. We owe them 8,300 a month. And we don't even owe them 8,300 a month probably if we're paying them every couple of weeks. We owe them 4,150, 4,200. And we don't owe them anything for a couple of weeks when they come on. And depending on when payroll is, we don't owe them anything for 3 weeks. And then we owe them 4,200. So someone could be 3 weeks into a job before we owe them 4,200 bucks. 3 weeks in is not long enough to know if someone's going to be good at a job, but it's starting to be long enough to know if they're bad. And this is why onboarding and training is so important. But then by the next 2 weeks, before we actually owe them the second check, we're 5 weeks into this person. And now we've invested $8,300. And maybe in the next couple of weeks, once we've invested $11,000 roughly in this person, because they've gotten three $2,400 checks. I think I did my math right. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I'm off there. You know, that is enough time to know if they're going to be good, or at least worth keeping around. And so, if we're hiring someone for 100 grand, we're really talking about a $10,000 to $15,000 gamble. We've got to start 3 to 4 months ahead, planning the process, and we want to budget for a couple months of pay as our potential investment to figure out if this is going to work. This is a 5 or 6 month process with a certain amount. So I want you guys to look at it like that. This is how we can plan around bringing people on and have enough money for them and have enough time and be prepared that we actually can run the relay correctly in the business so that we're handing the baton off to the new person we hire while they're coming in running and we're running too. And we keep momentum going in the business going forward. And so this creates a lot of clarity um, on what needs to happen and when. So this is when we decide who and when to hire is based on this reverse engineering piece. And this is where we can knock a strategic hiring plan out so that we can achieve our goals. And let's pop into the last slide and then I'll wrap it up here so we have time for Q&A. This piece is probably more important than the others. Although the others, if you don't have them done, you can't do this piece. But if you can successfully get through the first 3 sections of what we talked about here today, this is where many people are going to fall down. They will lose sight of the plan or they will drift because the first time it doesn't work, it's easy to fall back into old habits. And you have these best intentions, but we all know where the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The reality is it requires patience and commitment and consistency and creativity to see this stuff through, because we can lose sight of the plan and we might abandon it if it doesn't work. And so this is where we need to have really good clarity so that everyone knows what their role in the process is. We need to have a cadence of accountability and reporting. So if you're not using a system like EOS, we need something like that where we can track in daily metrics that we look at and review weekly, and then we roll up and make decisions on them and tweaks monthly, and then we make big changes. They're called rocks in EOS quarterly. If we don't have a cadence of accountability to ourselves about getting things done, when the plan's not working, where we can say, hey, we tried this and we expected this, but when we did this, this other thing happened. How can we learn from that and adjust the plan? This is a really, really important piece, and we need to have discipline for course correction. And this is where KPIs come in. So if any KPIs you guys create to reverse engineer and do all that fancy stuff I talked about, the bigger step that we need once we have all that done is having goal KPIs. So just like you might have a pro forma for how much money you're going to make and spend this year, we actually need to have a pro forma for your activity, your marketing activities, your sales activities, your operational activities, your administrative activities, your accounting activities. Those need to be reverse engineered to say, hey, if we support this growth plan that we created, what activities and results are going to happen during this plan? And those need to become goal KPIs for your team. Then we're going to track their actual KPIs against those. And when they don't match up, we need to have a process for studying what happened, course correcting, and then trying again. And it's okay if we're not hitting everything, as long as we're getting better over time and things are improving, we'll get there. And so a process to be able to manage and execute the plan that you create will give you deep insight into how your business operates. This is where, when you start doing this is when, we've been flying this ship around, especially when the economy is good. We just make a bunch of money and we just kind of do some things and it works and we make money. But over these last few years, and even right now in these economic times, sometimes we don't know what all the levers do and all the buttons do in our business. Hey, what if I do this other marketing campaign? What if I quit doing this? What if I start doing this? What if I do twice as much of this? What if I do half as much of this? What if I do this thing earlier in the process? What if we add this step in? This is where the creativity comes into play, where you're trying to close the gap between the KPIs you thought were going to happen and the KPIs that did happen. This is when we become immense students of the game and we really learn the business like the back of our hand. And so what that allows us to do is to go from reactively following our business and chasing it to proactively driving it, to saying, I know what lever to pull when this happens. I know what button to push when this other thing happens. So this is a huge benefit. This not only will it allow you to really march towards hitting your goals, like we told you at the beginning of this training, but it's also going to put you into a level of control, of proactive control, that you've never probably had in your business. And also, when we look back at the step on aligned to goals, now we can proactively push towards goals that actually matter to us as a business owner, and we can remove an immense part of the fear of not knowing what might happen in the business an immense part of the inconsistency of feeling like we're not really sure when things are going to occur and what does what. And then we're also going to get rid of the resentment of maybe we hit our goals and make a bunch of money, but we worked too hard and we got busy and we did things we don't like. And all of this is part of us getting to where we have a plan that's detailed enough, where the goals are detailed enough and the plan is detailed enough that we can go hire people. And when we go hire the right people, like if Team Architects helps you hire someone, or even if you do it on your own, if you insert them into a business that has this kind of plan with this kind of tracking, the potential for success is probably 10x, not even double. It is immensely multiplied because you have such a strategic plan and a commitment to it that when you're plugging someone into a machine rather than hiring someone and just having them run around with you and hope that it works. And so I hope this was helpful. And I would urge you guys that even if this is a little overwhelming, it was too much of the level of detail potentially, or maybe it's not enough detail, reach out to us. We're going to have time for Q&A here. But I want you guys to know that we're really committed to coming in and doing as many pieces that we can to help you guys have a successful team so you can scale your business, you can grow your business as well, but also scale it because scale is where you can exit. If you grow your business, that's where you get busier. But you can't scale a business until you have it, we'll call it fixed. I don't really like that word. Um, because scaling just means we get more of what we have. And if we've got little bumps and bruises and nicks right now, if we scale that, yes, our revenue might get bigger, but so do all our problems. So we want to clean things up now. We want to grow before we scale, and growing always has pain with it. But this is the mechanism for scaling your business because once you've done this cycle that I just talked about, you will have such insight and control of your business. You'll be able to plug employees in. And when you do, instead of you getting busier because now you have more to manage and more to deal with because you have people doing more, you actually remove things from your plate and your actually life is getting easier while your company is getting more successful. That's the hope and intent of this. And I hope you guys can take some version of this and apply it into your business um, for the year. And with that, Brandon, I think we'll hop straight into Q&A. I don't see anybody with questions in there, but I appreciate you guys listening to this. And and I know that from a business standpoint, whether it's on these calls, whether it's just getting a call like connect with Amber or Brandon or whomever you're connected with. And if you want me to get on a call or you want Brandon to talk to you or whatever we can do to try to help this, just know that over the next year, we're committed to adding more and more tools to our back office platform. We're committed to being better on these calls, being more strategic with how we support you guys on the coaching calls, the client calls, but also the tools that we offer for you guys to just be better at building the business on the back end.
Yeah, let's thanks, Steve. Let's open it up. I know there was a lot there. And just from who's on the call right now, Steve, Tony has a great deal of experience in this. This is a good refresher for him, but this isn't his first rodeo through this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But probably having this format to revisit and say, like, what is he doing? What are you planning? So Tony would, encourage you to comment here, and then Mike's more of a smaller team but growing. I think this presentation is super valuable for him to really say, am I being strategic in what I'm doing growing into the next year? Really looking at even from an EOS perspective, we look at a 3-year picture and then a 1-year plan. And this gets even more granular, but certainly encourage some comments from each of you. But yeah, Tony, go ahead and give us some feedback.
I would just say we're doing a lot of this, and we just went through this process, myself and a few of the other managers, looking at 26 goals, looking at, how our fees are structured, how our sales are structured, looking at opportunities where we're losing some money, leaking through some of those things that we provide that we don't charge for, and seeing how we can recapture that as part of the services that we do. So we're evaluating those kind of things. Likewise, on the factory floor, we're looking at how we can be more productive, measuring productivity, better understanding where our shortcomings are there as well. So we're taking kind of a holistic approach and of finding our baselines and putting plans in place to grow and get better, and then measure that growth as we go. We just put in place in the last couple of months ways that we measure our on-time delivery. where we didn't measure that before. We just knew we were late or we knew we were early, but we didn't really have any tools to really rely on. So we kind of went with the systems we have, we're kind of limited by, the systems that we have. We have a system for bulk orders, we have a systems for online orders, and those two don't talk to each other very well. So we've got to go into different places to peel through the data and spit it out and put it in formats that we can use it to evaluate and better understand. So we're going through some of those processes as well. But after our meeting yesterday, I feel like we're in a really good place with the team we have and the goals that we have for next year, and just understanding our shortcomings, understanding where we need to, fill some gaps and plug some holes and be set to grow. So we're still, we understand some of those holes, but we don't have all the answers for some of those holes. So and then just understanding it and knowing which direction to go is sometimes a win in itself. So.
100%. Yeah, you can't plug a hole that you don't know. If there's water just pouring in,
Exactly.
you don't even know where to look. And so, yeah, that's great.
Mike, you got any feedback?
Yeah, so Steve, you spoke to me on many points that you made.
Good.
I think that's a recorded boardroom call. I think I put out there, increase my net worth by 15 million and get to a net income of 5 million in 3 years. So the net income part, I think that was definitely shooting for the stars. But I am pretty close to tripling my income this year, so I was happy for that. But I definitely, being a solopreneur, it's 14-hour days. And so a lot of this, I notated all of it, the entire thing. So I hopefully retain this. And actually, I was going to ask you if I could afford you, I would like to hire you as coming in and seeing what I'm doing and potentially launching into 2026 a little more successful than without some guidance. But I do have one question. You had talked about lead gen to conversion to fulfillment to accounting and admin, and I kind of missed exactly what you said. So
Yeah.
can you comment on that again?
Yeah. First of all, you don't need to hire me to get on a call, Mike. As a boardroom director, maybe we can cover some really heavy ground with a good quick call. Especially,
Sure.
You're technically in my room, so I have owner. You're like one of my flock. So I need to. I'll shepherd you a little more than I would other people in boardroom. So let's definitely. I think you have my number. So shoot me a text, and we'll definitely get on a call and just see what ground we can cover on a call. But what I was saying is everybody's business is different, but really all businesses can be boiled down to 3 to 5 buckets of like functionality. And people that don't have their KPI, what I was speaking in terms of was if your KPIs aren't developed fully yet, and you're thinking, well, how can I do the reverse engineer piece? Because I'm not really sure. I was just saying a starting point is there's lead gen, which in your business it might be just personal contacts and whatever, but it's this is no joke. One of my coaching clients, they're they're working to build the largest retail development brokerage in the country, and so they build triple net standalone, like Starbucks's and Mr. Car Washes and whatever, and they have accounts all over the country. It's pretty awesome, but literally their marketing budget is renting private jets and taking people on ski trips. Like ski trips, he's in Minnesota. That is like 80% of their business comes from people he's taken on ski trips, brokers who love him, professional sporting. So it's kind of interesting. Like with them, we're literally trying to see their KPI on marketing is how much money do you spend on entertainment. But whatever yours might be networking, whatever it is, but we're going to have 2 or 3 activities, which are things you have control over. The results you don't have control over. So having someone raise their hand and say, yes, I would like to potentially work with you, Mike, on obtaining financing for a project. That's a result. That's like an interested party. So one of the results within the lead gen is going to be an actual lead is formed. We don't really have control over theirs, but we do have control over buying a list or dropping marketing to them or calling people or you showing up or joining a professional, advisory group or networking group for your, for whatever. And so there's going to be 2 or 3 activities and 1 or 2 results. This is like an advance. You got me in my dork status, my nerd. KPIs are like my love language, and this is like where I can see all the connections between things when I look into businesses. But there's going to be 3 to 5 activities and 1 or 2 results in each of those buckets. And so what I was saying is, if you're not really sure on how to build your metrics all the way out to reverse engineer, just start there and say, we generate leads, we convert them to clients, we fulfill for clients, and then we have the accounting stuff we do, and then we have the executive leadership stuff we do.
Yeah.
Each one of those is going to have 3 to 5 activities and 1 or 2 results. So that is 4 to 7 numbers inside of 3 to 5 buckets.
Yep.
Here's the real magic is all those numbers aren't relative, and there's really no context. Once we have all those, this is where the rubber really meets the road, where you can actually reverse engineer the plan. Is we need to know the ratio between them. So we're going to be dividing things into each other. Hey, when we do this 100 times, 20 times, this happens.
Yeah.
That 20% is the metric we care about. Yes, we need the 100 and we need the 20, but it's the division. It's when we combine an activity and a result through math, we create a number that has context. And that's the one thing I would say is initially that's important with any KPI, a key not a metric. There's a million metrics, a million numbers. The key numbers have context, meaning we know that they how they ripple out. And so we're usually dividing an activity into a result. The second thing is we need relativity. If we don't know what that number should be, we don't have a goal. You're just like, oh, hey, we got a 16% whatever. On the floor, Tony, we got a 12% defect rate on some stuff. Well, I don't know. Is that good or bad? Like, it's not relative to anything. And if we say, hey, we had 13 defects yesterday, that's even, there's no context. If we had 13 defects out of 13 widgets we tried to, I don't know what you do, Tony, but you said factory. So it's like, if we have 13 out of 13 defects, that's pretty dang bad. If we did 1,000 things yesterday and had 13 defects, that's pretty dang good. So like, I don't have any context unless I do the math to get a key process indicator, to take a metric from a metric to a key process. And then I compare the mathed up number against a goal to an actual. Now I have relativity. So I know I geeked out there, but Mike, I think this is really important for anyone who's really building a business from the beginning up, is like getting your numbers really figured out, is that activities I have control over, but the results matter more to me, but I don't have any control over results. All I can control is the activities that produce the results. So I need to be studying the activities. I need to focus on the activities. But for me to historically watch what I'm doing so I can more proactively plan, I need to math them up and I need to compare them to the goal. And the goal has to be valid. And then then all of a sudden, when I've dorked out and I have my lead gen, my sales, I have all these numbers built, we'll call it the dashboard. Then that's when you can proactively run your business and do all this reverse engineering and goal setting. Now, like, all that stuff is super easy. It's actually fun.
Thank you.
You didn't know you were asking me a soapbox question. Sorry, but
No, it's good. I am focused on my KPIs leading up into the meeting. So, in creating what KPIs I'm going to track and how I'm going to track them. So that's why I was asking this question. So
perfect.
super helpful. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know we ran over. I know sometimes we go over on the hour, but is there anything else that we can help with right now with you guys?
I'm good. Thank you.
I think we're good.
Well, thanks for getting on, guys. I know you guys are like, regulars, and it's crazy that at any given time we're, hiring for, I don't know, whatever, 2, 3 dozen people, or with multiple roles, and we have all this stuff going on. And it's crazy that all the people don't get on and ask questions. I don't know, like, what, because even if you guys don't know this, but even if you guys were on here and I'm like, Brandon and Amber do a good job. I'm sure they answer the vast majority of everything, but like, just know this, that myself and Kent and Eddie and Jerry and the other owners, like, and then there's 6 or 7 recruiters, and then there's Bobby that runs recruiting, and there's this whole team of people that Brandon and Amber are representing, that we have access to all that knowledge. And so just know that if you're watching this replay or you guys are on here, just bring your worst and hardest problems and best opportunity. Bring it all here. If it has to do anything with your business and your team, bring it here, because they can, if we can't answer it on the call, what it does is gives us an opportunity to be better at what we do. So I would just challenge you guys to really take advantage of this. And if you know anyone you're referring or know anyone else that's using us, mention to them, or, just let people know that this call is really here to help. And I think this coming year, we'll probably see more folks hop on, because the more people that get on and ask better questions, the more information everybody's going to get out of this. And so, yeah, I appreciate seeing you guys on here. And Brandon, thanks for running it and putting it together.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks again. As Steve mentioned, ruminate on this, think about it. If you haven't already planned your 2026 plans, make sure you're doing that with your team. And the other thing is really be aggressive on your growth plans. Really be, Mike, you mentioned you tripled your income, big numbers there. And if you don't shoot high, you don't have those kinds of results. So definitely put yourself out there to grow in all areas of your business. All right, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Take care. Bye.
Yeah.